suppose we'll get into it. Michigan 34, Nebraska 3. Not a whole lot. Dominating run game by Michigan. Corum still at about 28 yards, 162, 28 carries, 162 yards and a touchdown. Donovan Edwards looks like he got dinged up. I think that's why Corum had so many carries. I don't think going in they wanted to give him that many touches, but with Edwards getting dinged up, I think they weren't left much of a choice. But CJ Stokes stepped up. He had a really good game. He had a couple of nice runs, eight rushes for 68 yards. Wasn't quite able to hit on that big pass that I was hoping for Michigan was going to be able to. Nebraska's credit, Michigan tried, but Nebraska had their receivers fairly well covered. Weather was a little bit iffy, and kind of just run the ball when you're running it as well as Michigan is. You don't really have to do a whole lot. And looking across the sideline, there wasn't a whole lot that Nebraska offense was going to do because Casey Thompson didn't play. Their offensive coordinator was knocked out of the game at the end of the first half after a collision on the sideline. So overall, Michigan got out of there with a win, healthy for the most part. Hopefully Schoonmaker and Edwards are going to be okay. Hopefully they can. I don't think they'll. Hopefully, shouldn't need them too much this week against Illinois, but get healthy because there's a fairly big game coming up in 2 weeks because it looks like Michigan and Ohio State are on quite the collision course.
The one thing I wonder is why would Corum, why would they feed him 28 times? Like just you're getting into the later part of the season, try to save his legs, continue to give Donovan Edwards more carries than your other backs there. Just Dylan, is this just a late Heisman push by Michigan here, trying to get Corum to New York, more touches, more yards, maybe more time into the end zone, that late season Heisman push here?
Well, like I said earlier, I don't think they wanted to. I think if Donovan Edwards doesn't get dinged up, I think he had did something to his hands, so they were thin at running back already. And Nebraska kind of hung around. It wasn't like Michigan was out of control of the game, but it just wasn't quite where there wasn't those big explosive plays that you would think would happen in a 34-3 game. It was more methodical, just move the sticks 10 yards at a time type of game. And Corum was out with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, it was just kind of the way the game played out. Nebraska's secondary played really well, didn't really give up a whole lot deep. It was a lot of short intermediate passes for McCarthy. And just sometimes that's just kind of how it ends up. They ended up probably giving him 28 carries. It didn't feel like it, but then you look at the stat line. I think he probably had 3/4 of his touches were in the first half. And they were able to get CJ Stokes some touches. They had another running back. He's a freshman. Had a couple of good runs as well. So, I wouldn't say it was it wasn't planned. I don't think it was a Heisman push, but yeah, sometimes it just kind of happens that way, and hopefully don't have to do that next week because I'd rather have them fresh because you probably are going to need them for 28 to 30 carries against Ohio State. Not probably, you will need them for 28 to 30 carries if you want to beat Ohio State.
Well, yeah, because I think if Michigan, if they have to throw the ball, if your leading rusher on the year doesn't, if he only has between 16 and 20 carries against Ohio State, that probably means you're down, and that means JJ's throwing the ball a lot. And that wasn't the recipe last year because what was it in the second half? They threw twice or 4 times.
It was like 4 times, yeah.
And they just ran it down Ohio State's throat. So you want to do that again because, like you said, we're looking 2 weeks ahead out here. But if you have to throw the ball 30 to 35 times, that's not the ideal situation to put yourself in.
No. And well, 34-3.